The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys!
Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Yeah, and so much for that.
It's time for The Break on DallasCowboys.com
We were on the break!
with Ambar Garcia, Brian Broaddus, Patrick Walker, and Derek Eagleton.
It is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, season 19, episode number 53. Welcome to the latest edition of The Break, and I have got a really special surprise for you guys out there listening. When I put together this mashup of hosts on the different shows, the one thing I wanted to do on this show, on Cowboys Break, was I wanted to find the people I thought probably had some of the most diverse opinions of our entire staff and put them together and then just like toss the ball up in the air and let y'all go.
Let the fire ensue.
And that's exactly what I've done. We've got Danny McCray from Players Lounge. We've got Nick Harris from Talking Cowboys. We've got John Machota also from Talking Cowboys. And it's time to step up. You guys are now in the big leagues. And so we can get this thing rolling. I do want to start first with a big picture, a really big picture question. After 6 weeks, 6 games, give me just your biggest storyline you think that's surrounding this team at this point of the season, heading into the bye, after what McCarthy calls the first trimester. Let's start with you, John.
Probably I was going to say a stale offense, but there was a little bit of a heartbeat in Los Angeles, so I'll say a somewhat stale offense. That's my thing. I mean, there's been up and downs with the defense, but it's the offense. Like obviously it can't be what it is right now when you play the Eagles multiple times and get to the playoffs. It has to get much better. So can they continue building on where they are right now? I would think that at the bare minimum they have to get something going in the run game for that to happen. So that would be my overarching storyline, because going into this season, that was going to be the big thing was, no Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy's calling the plays. How's it going to look? And the way the season started, you were like, wow, this complimentary football thing, nobody else knows how to do this. It seems like it's pretty easy here. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely getting that offense going, and how's it going to look? So.
For me, it's inconsistency. That's been the theme. You never know what team you're going to get every Sunday. Each week, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. And you typically know about halfway through the first quarter. It's like, okay, this is the team that they came with today. Or it's, this is the team they came with today. So there's got to be a level of consistency, especially with the opponents that you mentioned that they got coming up out of the break. You got Rams, Eagles. It doesn't get easier. And then later in the season, Buffalo, Miami. You have to have consistent team on both sides of the ball to play against those type of opponents. So for me, it's inconsistency. While there is a lot of negatives that you can draw out of these first 6 weeks, though, you're still 4-2, and I think that's probably a best case scenario considering how they played in some of these games.
Yeah, mine is the lack of what I expected from bringing in Brandon Cooks, having CeeDee Lamb going into this year, hearing what I heard out of training camp, expecting Michael Gallup to then be healthy, saying, all right, we have some explosive players. This offense, although we're going to play to the strength of our defense, we're still going to be able to take some shots and complete those passes. And we just haven't seen it, right? So when I'm looking at a guy like Brandon Cooks and you say, okay, take the top off, right? Bust some hamstrings as he's running down, the defender should be scared of him. I haven't seen that, and that's what I expected. So to your point, yes, this offense and not being able to then stretch the field and put some fear in some defenses is kind of that thing where I'm like, we got to see it if we want to be successful this season.
You touch on something there, expectations. I'll take you guys back to training camp in Oxnard and what you thought of this team at that time. How much has that changed, good or bad, from what you thought of them going into the season to where they are right now?
Because I wasn't at training camp, but I was hearing, man, Brandon Cooks, fast, looking explosive. I was hearing about the crazy catches that CeeDee Lamb was making. I was hearing Michael Gallup is looking a lot healthier than he was last year. So my expectation was, okay, although we're playing to that strength of the defense, we're still going to go out here and Dak Prescott is going to look like the Dak Prescott of old because he has the weapons now, which we've been asking for. And then I haven't seen it. So my expectation hasn't been met. But can it still be? Yes, because last game we did see some shots get taken. Michael Gallup dropped, one or two or whatever, but we're still taking those shots. And I think as the season goes on, if you continue taking those, then you'll catch them.
Yeah, I would say if we're just going record-wise, they're right where I thought they would be. I mean, at that time, you're talking training camp, I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers is going to be with the Jets, and I thought that they would lose to the Niners. Now, I didn't think it would look that ugly, but I thought that they would probably be around 4-2. So that part doesn't surprise me. But the blowouts they had to start the season, just how, I wouldn't want to say a lack of effort, but just how poorly they came out against Arizona, I never would have expected that. And then just the fact of just how they got blown out by the Niners. I never thought that that would happen. I just felt like this team is built to play the Niners tight to where it comes down to like a last possession or two. Let's see who's going to win this game. And for it to be that one-sided, I never would have expected that, with the fact of, I mean, I get that they didn't have Overshown. I get that they didn't have Diggs. But relatively speaking, you look across the rest of the league, I mean, they're relatively healthy going into that game. Finally had that, the first-team offensive line together. So I didn't expect that part of it.
Yeah, I remember telling people back home whenever I was at training camp, I was like, this team's pretty good. Like it looks like they can play complementary football on both sides just by the way the offense is being constructed. You see the big shots that they're able to take with the speed guys like Brandon Cooks, and it wasn't only him. Kevontae Turpin was getting super involved in the offense. We saw a glimpse of that in San Francisco, but I expected maybe a little bit more of that at this point. And then Jalen Tolbert, I expected him to be a little bit more ingrained in the offense as well. But I think you could say that for any of the pass catchers at this point. As far as defense, the defensive side, Trayvon Diggs, obviously that injury hurts and that affects expectations in the secondary. But overall, I don't feel like my overall expectations declined whenever he was, put out of the picture. The pass rush, it's been up and down at times. Again, it's been like a Jekyll and Hyde, it feels like. But whenever they're on, it's one of the best defenses in football.
What about the tight end room?
Yeah.
Because like we talk about it on the Players Lounge of like, okay, Dalton Schultz, should we pay him? Should we not? But quarterbacks, the good ones, they need those outlets, right? Those guys who are the safety blankets. Romo had it with Witten. You see Kelsey. You see all these teams. Goddard with Philly. They have those guys, and you expect it with Dalton Schultz leaving, us drafting a guy in the second round in school, and then also having Hendershot and Ferguson saying, okay, Dak Prescott's going to have his guy. Stretch the seam. If not, he's still going to have that safety outlet, and we haven't seen it. And to me, I think that is a huge thing as far as what Dak Prescott has not been able to do in the offense.
But as you say that, my thought is, I think, yes, Schoonmaker, Hendershot, I don't think they've played up to par. I don't think they've been where you would have expected them to be. I think Ferguson has been as good as you would want him to be at this point in his career. I think he's given you that. I actually don't know if Dak even uses him as much as he's available to him. I think there are plays when you see Ferguson gets open and Dak goes somewhere else with the ball for whatever reason. Sometimes it's a completion, sometimes it's not. I don't know that I look at Ferguson and say he can't give you – the only area where I think Ferguson is not giving you what you had previously is in the red zone. And that's part of the red zone problems. Maybe you're not getting that same level of production from your tight ends in the red zone. But other than that, I think you're getting what you wanted from Ferguson, right?
So my thing is I don't think it's the players. I think it's the comfortability with the player, right? Because that Schultz is Dak's guy, right? Yeah. So you have to then work to have that connection with that person, right? Witten and Romo had that connection to where Witten could Romo could close his eyes and he would know exactly where Witten was going to be. Mm-hmm. Or if Witten was going to run the opposite route of what he was supposed to, Romo knew exactly why he was going to run that, and the ball would be there. That is just a connection thing versus the skill of what we have in the tight end room. I just don't think we have that yet, and I think you had that with Dalton Schultz, and it was growing, and you could see that in the numbers that was Dak Prescott's guy.
Worth the money that he paid.
No. I'm not saying we should have kept Dalton Schultz. I'm saying when you look at what we're missing on the offense, then you may be missing that safety blanket connection that Dak Prescott says, no matter what, I'm going to be able to look to this guy or throw the ball up, and he's going to figure out a way to come down and get it on one of those third downs that you need or in the red zone.
I think, in my opinion, Jake Ferguson's right where he needs to be. Coming into a year where he's the full-time starting tight end, if you had asked me this time last year, hey, one of these tight ends that's in the building right now, he's going to be the comfortable tight end one, I would have lost my mind. I would have been like, there's no way. But Ferguson, he's taking that challenge. Mm-hmm. I think he's right where he needs to be. He's creating that chemistry with Dak. He texted him before they left Levi Stadium last week and said, I'm with you till the wheels fall off. And that was was kind of huge towards not only their chemistry, but him being able to build that on-field dynamic as well. I think there's a lot to be taken away from that. So I like where Ferguson is at, but the rest of the tight ends combined, I think I looked it up yesterday, 2 receptions for 4 yards. So there's got to be some sort of added expertise there in that tight end room. Schoonmaker, I think, is the guy you look at, though. You brought him in as a second-round pick. First-round pick hasn't done a whole lot either. So there's even added pressure onto Schoonmaker for that same instance. So I want to see him get a little bit more ingrained in the offense, get him some red zone opportunities. He's got that big, wide frame. I want to see them try to use that in one-on-one situations. I think there's a lot of stuff to be played with there.
Yeah, it's interesting how Schultz was a 4th-round pick, Ferguson's a 4th-round pick, and Jake's definitely ahead of where Schultz was going into his second season. So because
we're
of
ready
that,
to cut him on our show. I don't know what y'all were talking about. We're ready to cut him after year 2.
Yeah. So with that being the same, you kind of compare expectations there a little bit. But really, since Witten, I don't know that they've had that. I guess they did to certain points last year with Schultz, but there really was a little bit of some growing pains where it was supposed to be Schultz, and actually it wasn't even supposed to be Schultz. It was supposed to be Jarwin, and Jarwin gets hurt, and then ever since then they've been trying to find that next guy, and there's just something about tight ends, man. It's so tough to project like who's going to be good in terms of where they're drafted at. Like you see a Kyle Pitts go super high, you're thinking, oh, this guy's coming in, he's about to wreck this league right now. And maybe if he's in a different situation, he does. But tight ends are one of those positions that it's like, I guess you just keep taking swings at the bat and hope that you get the right guy. I think Ferguson's the right guy, but to your point, I don't know if maybe he's quite right now where Schultz was when he left.
What really hurts here is the fact that you could use a receiving type tight end that really excels in that part of his game, but also has a little bit of run block. And John Stevens Jr., I feel like he would have just been perfect at this moment right now. But
between him and Overshown, I'll toss that to you guys. Like both of them during training camp were guys that really stood out, and you could see a role for them developing. Which do you think was a bigger loss for this team?
It would have to be Overshown just because of the injuries that have happened since then in the second level, and they were already thin before Overshown even went down and before Leighton Vander Esch went down. I would have to say him just because there's probably more of a role for him than John Stevens, but both of them do hurt in their own respective ways.
Yeah, I think it's Overshown for me because not only the way he was playing, but there was something about like kind of a swagger I thought he would have brought with his playmaking ability. I wonder a little bit if they lost some of that with Diggs going down too. When in that Niners game, it's like you watch that Niners game, you're not like, oh, if they have Trayvon Diggs, so then this game's totally different. Not from a playing standpoint, maybe that the game's totally different, but I do think that was like a major blow to this team because he brings something that is a little bit of a swagger, a little bit of an energy that's a little bit different. And then Overshown, I think, would have done the same thing where you just have these ball hawks on different levels making these big time plays. And I think it's taken them a little bit to get over that. So it would be Overshown for me.
Yeah, same here. I think when you see the impact that Overshown was having in the preseason, you say, okay, if he can translate that then to the regular season, then you have a very strong linebacking core. And then you look at the teams that have good defenses or great defenses, those linebackers are flying around. I just remember watching Tampa with Devin White, right?
Yeah.
Sideline to sideline. You're watching Fred Warner now up there with San Francisco. Like the linebacking position can change the game for you. And when you look at a guy like Overshown, you're like, oh man, there's the expectation for this guy should be a little bit higher than what we thought it should be. So with him going down, I think that was huge, especially with now LVE, and then now you have Damone Clark as a young guy, and they're kind of taking the reins. It's just hard to make up for a guy like that.
Frankly, that was what Overshown was at Texas, was that kind of fly around guy, always around the ball, always making plays. So it wasn't really a shock to me to see it when he got here, but certainly it was a shock to see it happen that soon and him to start flashing that early and flashing as often as he did. So I really think that's a huge loss for them. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, I got a lot of questions for these guys. We're going to roll through some of these, talk about what we think has happened to this team over the first trimester. We'll do that when we come back. DallasCowboys.com radio.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Cowboys fans, after that move, we've just coined the term Rowdy Replay. Let's roll back the tape.
Okay, there's our mascot Rowdy cheering on the boys, and now he's on his phone on his Bank of America mobile banking app?
Staying on top of his finances with his virtual financial assistant, Erica.
Bank of America's digital tools are so impressive. Cowboys fans just can't stop banking. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/can't-stop-banking.
Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. Member FDIC.
Welcome back into Dear Doctor, the show where I answer life's questions with an ice-cold can of Dr. Pepper. Sheila, let's hear from our next caller, would you?
Dear Doctor, my friend supported me during a tough time, but what's the right gift that says, thanks for being a shoulder to cry on?
Okay, this one's easy. I say give her a delicious Dr. Pepper. Nothing says, thanks, girl, better than a one-of-a-kind soda. Yes, any Dr. Pepper flavor will do. Now, just a reminder that I don't need to be a real doctor to know that Dr. Pepper is the one you deserve.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag & Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag & Turf, the official Ag & Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to the break.
Welcome back. It is the second segment of the break, live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. We're presented by blockchain.com. All right, I got a list of questions here that we're going to go through that will kind of tell everyone your opinions on what's happened over the first 6 games of the season. My first question for you guys is, I want you to rank these in order of most meaningful win. New York Giants, New York Jets, New England Patriots, Los Angeles Chargers. Top to bottom, most meaningful win.
Chargers first. Looking at the Jets now, I think the Jets was a good win because their defense is playing really well. Giants and then Patriots. I don't know what's going on with the Patriots.
What's going on with the Patriots.
Smoked by everybody. So all of a sudden, those blowouts don't seem as significant as they did at the beginning of the season. So that's what I got.
Yeah, I agree with the first two. I got the Patriots just above the Giants only because when they played the Patriots, they still had. Oh my God, it's blanking me. Grand Valley State kid, Matthew Judon, and they still had Christian Gonzalez, and so I think that was
for a little bit. He was out. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
What do you got? The first or second quarter?
It was early.
It was early.
Yeah.
And then just to hand Belichick that worst loss. That's the only reason why. And also, I just don't really think too much of the Giants, so that's why they're just last there. But no, I agree with you on the Chargers. I'm not saying that anybody should do this, but I often go into games going, okay, who's got the better quarterback? And I thought the Cowboys had a really good chance to win that game, but I did not think that Justin Herbert would play that poorly. And so because of that, I was like, man, that's going to be an impressive win if you can get that, especially coming off the Niners loss. So I would have that there. And then also just because looking back on the Jets now, you're like, man, that looks like a pretty good win. I guess that defense is a lot better than a lot of people thought. So yeah, that's probably
I'd have to take the Chargers win first as well, to the same points as you guys made. Being able to bounce back off the Niners loss and going into the bye week, all those things. For me, number 2 is the Patriots win because of the Trayvon Diggs injury and them being able to bounce back and show that the defense still can perform to a high level, and Deron Bland still can fill in, for injured guys and play well. And those 2 interceptions were huge, and I think that gave confidence to that entire defensive unit, even if they kind of lost a little bit up the next week. But third out of the Jets, and then 4th Giants.
I just because I want to just push back a little bit with this Patriots thing. Did they? So we gave Bill Belichick his worst loss. And what happened the next week?
Stinker.
Somebody gave him an even worse loss, right? Was it worse? Was it worse or was
I think it was worse.
Close. I know it was close.
I think it was the worst in the McCarthy era.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Wait, so no, the Patriots.
No,
so
Patriots. The next week,
after the next week, they went and got smoked again.
Yeah, they did.
And then I'm
Back
looking
to
at it
back.
and I'm saying, okay, as it's happening, we're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is impressive. And then the next week they go get smoked, and I'm like, oh wait,
Maybe it wasn't the Cowboys.
I wanted to have some positive take back from this, and they went and got smoked again. Same thing with the Giants. They wouldn't, they playoff team last year. Then you go into the first game, you're like, okay, we just beat a playoff team like that, and they went and got 40 put on them again like a couple weeks later. And you're like, no, what does this mean about us, right?
Yeah.
What does this mean about us? So, I don't know. Patriots, goodness, they're struggling.
Next question. Which problem area do you think is most urgently in need of being fixed? The red zone offense, penalties. Right now, they are 31st in the NFL in penalties per game, or the offensive line.
I'll start here and say penalties, just because it seems like every time I was looking up on Sunday night, yellow flags just all over the place. There's got to be some sort of discipline emphasis going into this bye week. They've been talking about it since the Arizona game. Mike McCarthy has. He said one of the blinking lights is the team penalties, and we got to clean those up. And even in some of the wins, like the penalties have really put them behind in some certain areas. It almost cost them the game on Monday night. So for me, it's got to be penalties, but I understand the case for either of the other two.
Yeah, penalties for me, just because I don't even think it's just a this year thing. It's been the last few years. I mean, that was a huge issue in that loss to the Niners at AT&T Stadium. Remember when the fans were throwing stuff? I mean, there was some, issues there. Maybe I'm biased because since I've covered the team, I've only covered two head coaches. It's Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy. And they're definitely on those Mondays after games when we go do the walkout with Jason Garrett. There was plenty of complaints and stuff about the penalties and things like that. I just don't remember as many times where it was kind of like, whoa, double-digit penalties here, and especially the pre-snap stuff. I mean, and I know that bothers Mike McCarthy the most. It's the lining up offsides, false starts, and things like that. So that, for me, is clearly number one because, I mean, I think if the offense stays healthy, I do think that the red zone will figure itself out. The longer these guys play together, if you can keep that offensive line healthy, I do think that it'll figure itself out. The penalty thing, though, I can't sit here and say today that I think it's going to be any better 5 weeks from now.
Yeah, I would say offense because I did expect more. But then if you're going to play this type of offense where it's conservative and you're playing to the hands of your defense, then you can't afford to be behind the sticks. You can't afford to then extend drives on defense as well because that is not what you're playing to. So I think it's more important and more impactful for you to take care of what you're doing in the penalty with your penalty numbers because 3rd and 15, 1st and 15 or you make a big play and then all of a sudden you get a holding call, that sets you back when you're not that explosive on offense. You need to make sure that you have that cleaned up. So, because I don't know how much faith we have in converting a 3rd and 15.
Yeah, and it'd be different if some of these penalties were not, or if they were, part of the game.
Right.
Physical pass interferences, those happens to every team. I wouldn't be worried about that if it happened once or twice a game. But it's the lining up offsides. It's the 12 men on the field, having to burn a timeout so you can get the right guys on the field. It's lining up on the line of scrimmage when you shouldn't be. It's the little things, and that's just discipline at the end of the day. That's something they got to work on.
I remember Kelvin Joseph did that, and we were like, oh, goodness gracious. Kelvin Joseph, of course, right? Because he'll get a penalty on defense, penalty on special teams. We thought it was over. And I was like, hold on, not curse.
Yeah.
Exact same side of the field, playing man-to-man coverage lined up offside. So I think it's a attention to detail thing and also then a lack of focus. But that is something I think you can get fixed, especially from a veteran guy. So hopefully you won't see any more of those. But if you do, I know. It's just like you said, it's not just this year. This has been a couple year thing of dealing with penalties with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, 14 penalties, 89 yards in that. I just looked it up for that Niners game 2 years ago in the play. That was such a huge part of that game. And that's when I really kind of was like, maybe this is just the style that they want to play. I've always had that belief with the Seattle, back end of the defense. Like, hey, we're going to be physical, but I bet you don't call all these. I bet you don't throw all these flags, and a lot of times they don't. And to be honest with you, I think the Niners kind of play that way a little bit too, where they get real grabby on the back end, and they're just like, well, they're not going to throw a flag on all this. But that's one style. The other is all the pre-snap stuff. Well, you can't have that, right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that none of you guys took the red zone offense just because it goes back to what you were arguing, Danny. When you're going to play this style of game where you're going to say we're not going to be as explosive offensively. We're going to play into the hands of our defense and special teams, going to get short fields, give our offense opportunity to get scores. to me, it becomes even more important when you get in red zone, especially when you get in goal-to-goal situations. You got to score. You got to score touchdowns. You can't settle for field goals. And to me, I think that's a bigger problem when you start thinking about it, because how many games this year where the Cowboys have scored even more points than what they scored if the offense just could have taken advantage of the opportunities that were there before them? I think that really is the biggest issue.
I'm the fool here because I love Dan Quinn so much that I'm like, even when we get like when the red zone problems were there and they were kicking field goals, I was saying, hey man, in every drive with a kick, and your team, if your defense plays how we expect them to play, has a shot in any game, right? So if you get down there, instead of going for it on fourth and whatever, if you kick a field goal and leave with 3, I still think that you got a shot at winning the game. So I was okay with the field goals and not scoring the touchdowns when I thought that our defense was always going to be able to bail us out.
And that's my question. Like, do you guys still think that this defense is as special as we may have thought it was earlier in the season? I know after week 2, I was saying, hey, that we might be watching their ascension to being the best defense in the league and maybe one of those defenses that you talk about years down the road. I don't know that I believe that anymore. Where do you guys fall with this defense?
Yeah, definitely not. It's not the Legion of Doom or the 85 Bears that we were all trying to compare them to after week 2. It's not that, for sure. My expectations have changed, but I think a little bit goes into the complimentary football that the offense has been giving them. I mean, in that first half against the Niners, my goodness, like they were. I can't fault them for any of their faults that they had. Even when they were backed up into the red zone off that Tony Pollard fumble, Jordan Lewis was able to force the McCaffrey fumble and give the offense another opportunity and another 3 and out. Yeah. So there just needs to be a little bit better complementary football from the offensive side, but that doesn't mean the defense is perfect. Their run defense has been up and down. That they were able to limit Eckler. They were largely able to limit McCaffrey until later in the game Jordan Mason came in and got some extra run, and then in the Cardinals game that kind of speaks for itself. But if they can just have consistency in that run game, I think they'll be fine. I think they can still be a top 5 defense in this league. I'm confident in that. They just need to find a little bit of consistency.
Yeah, I worry about us playing the upper echelon teams. As we said, the teams that they played at the beginning when we thought that they were going to be this generational defense, and then we figure out that those teams are also playing that way against other teams, is where I'm like, okay, well, the confidence went down. Then you lose Trayvon Diggs, and you're like, okay, all right, we'll see, but that is a huge loss because we know at any given time Trayvon Diggs can then get an interception or take that interception back for 7, right? He's he can change the entire game. So I don't feel as confident playing against a team like Detroit. Like, dare I say, like, oh, wait, we talking about the Detroit Lions? Yeah. Like, when you get to playing those teams, the Eagles, maybe the Rams, I don't feel as comfortable as I felt before because I was like, we can shut anybody out after the first 2 games. Like, we can hold them to 0, and now I don't feel as confident. And then, but the great thing about that is we won't be playing the 49ers again until possibly the playoffs, and I think that's an offense that just gives you problems, especially when you have young guys out there playing and they have to figure out how to read pulling tackles and then not see the go sweep coming across. I think that was played a lot into why they were able to make some of the plays that they did.
I'll tell you this: every time I watch the Miami Dolphins, I just dread Christmas Eve. That's gonna be tough because this defense, it struggles with speed. They've proven it so far this season, and that is probably the fastest team in football history.
And not only that, you think about what they've done over the first. This defense has been solid in a lot of areas. One area I think that doesn't get talked about a lot is they lose receivers downfield regularly. Yep. Every game it tends to happen at least once or twice. This last game they didn't get burned by, but Keenan Allen had 2 plays where he beat them downfield. Should have been a touchdown on at least one of them in my opinion. And when you start playing teams that are, by the way, you think about the quarterbacks and the wide receiver tandems that you've played so far. They're nothing compared to what you're going to face as the season goes on, right? With the Eagles, with the Bills, with the Chargers. Like, there's going to be some teams that have real quarterback wide receiver duos that are extremely dangerous. If the Cowboys don't get that part fixed on the back end, that's going to be a problem. And that will be exposed this defense, I think, in a way that they haven't really been exposed to this point.
Yeah, listen, Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert, before they got to that game on Monday, unreal. And I don't even watch the Chargers like that, but I do have Keenan Allen on my fantasy football team, so I know
You've been scoring.
I know he's having a hell of a season. And if Justin Herbert does hit the one, it was a double move on Ron Bland. He fell down.
That was
and
so
if you
rough.
hit that, then the game is different, right? So yeah, you are going to play against some teams where they're here. They're not missing that one. Justin Herbert had a very bad day. That was probably an anomaly, and thankfully he had it against us because it helped us go into the bye week with the win. But yes, you are. Yeah,
we saw it with Kittle. Kittle got open on that one play where it's like, who was supposed to be covering? Everybody was in man coverage, but it looked like he was in zone. And it was just those situations where they lose receivers in the back end of the defense, and then those things can turn into really big plays when you're playing really competent offenses.
And I don't think you can be a generational defense to have that game against Arizona. Not in week 3. You don't need wake-up calls in week 3 if you're a generational defense. Like everybody says, defense travels. I mean, you can have a bad game, but it can't look like that. Not against Joshua Dobbs and that crew. And I mean, no disrespect to them, but I mean, look what they've done since then. I mean, that can't happen. And not if you're going to be on that, like the Ravens, Bucks, those great, Seahawks defenses.
Yep. And I wonder how much of it is initiated in the secondary and the back end by maybe them expecting the pass rush to get home a little bit quicker on other times, because you look at the games that they've won, it's the pass rush that's kind of started the momentum there, and then the secondary is able to play more physical. They're able to come up and lose some guys downfield as a result. But Justin Herbert, he had a bad game on Monday night, but how much was it attributed to that pass rush getting home? I think they had 17 pressures in total, and when they have more than 15 pressures since Dan Quinn's been here, they're 17-2. So whenever they get home, it allows that secondary to be a little bit more physical, a little bit more aggressive, but it's going to burn them. And it burned them against Arizona and that Marco Wilson 69-yard reception, and it's going to burn them again. It's kind of a nature of just having that type of defense. But you look at the Niners, they play the exact same way. They have an aggressive pass rush, and their secondary plays aggressive too. They don't give up those big plays. So there's got to be something on the back end that gets fixed.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that Wilson play, though, because that was a big backbreaker when the defense was really starting to get momentum and playing well. They overcame what they did in the first half, and then you have that, and you're just like...
I think it was third down, too. It's like, all right, we're going to turn this in.
And the other thing is, too, is that I always complain about this. Like, it's just tough to see some of this stuff when you're watching it, like, on TV. But, like, when you're up in the press box and you're just seeing... You just see some of the stuff before it happened, just like...
Oh gosh!
Why is that guy not have anybody within 25 yards of him? Does anybody else see that? Anybody else see that? And then he throws, and you're just like, oh, that's not going to be great for them there. So because the defense overcame things, but then still had that. That's another reason why it's hard for me to say. I will say though, I thought that going into the season. Now going into next season with what I think they'll be able to keep, you get Overshown back and Diggs. I do think it does have the pieces there in spots to be one of those type defenses. I just don't think it's there yet.
All right, we're going to take our final break. We will come back. The next question I will have for these guys will be, what has been the most, or what will be the most impactful injury as we go down the rest of the season between Leighton Vander Esch and Trayvon Diggs? We'll be back. DallasCowboys.com radio.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Don't put off getting your oil changed, Dallas. Take 5 Oil Change, a proud partner of the Cowboys, is faster than you think. There's no appointment needed and no waiting room. Yep, you heard that correctly. Take 5 is so fast, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can take advantage of Take 5's fast, friendly, and simple service at any of their locations across the Dallas area. And remember, at Take 5, you stay in your car because they're faster than you think. Take 5, the official oil change of the Dallas Cowboys.
It's the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black. And right now, Cowboys fans can get 15% off their $75 order. Plus, because every deal needs a playmaker, your order will include a free 5-piece skincare set and free shipping. The Jack Black Playmaker is 4 of Jack's favorites and a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Make a play for the Playmaker at getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code Cowboys Cowboys VIP. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code Cowboys VIP.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to the break.
Rally Days presented by SeatGeek give NFL fans an experience of a lifetime the day prior to Dallas Cowboys home games. On October 28th, enjoy activities at Miller Lighthouse, get a behind-the-scenes tour of AT&T Stadium, and more. Visit attstadium.com/Rally Days for more information and to get your tickets today.
Welcome back. We are in the final segment of the break. We're live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. Got my special guests here today, Danny McCray, Nick Harris, John Machota, and they'll be with us today and then again on Monday. We're not going to have shows on Thursday and Friday this week. I know the fans are going to hit me up about that, but I think it's important to give our guys a little time to kind of regroup and get their lives together.
What are you doing?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm going to sit on my couch.
There we go.
And do absolutely
You're not going back to New York?
No. I had fun last week. My daughter's in college there, so I went to go see her for Parents Weekend. I've been traveling between games and going to see her. Like, I've been traveling a lot lately. I'm very happy to go sit somewhere and just sit. Okay, so here we go. Next question I have for you guys. What do you think is a more impactful injury? And you can talk about it to this point, but also projecting down the line based on what you've seen between Leighton Vander Esch and Trayvon Diggs. Not necessarily the best player between the two, but which one is going to be more impactful as far as their loss to the team?
Oh, LVE to me. I think when you look back at this team over the last 2 years, the thing that you try to fix on defense has been the run game. You go out and draft Mozzie Smith in the first round because you're like, hey, in order for us to compete and make it deeper in the playoffs, and we play against these physical teams, Philly and the 49ers, we need to be able to stop the run. Well, Leighton Vander Esch is a huge piece of you stopping the run. And your inability to do that, if that's what the effect of not having LVE is, then that's huge for you because on defense, you feel like that is what stopped you from being better and moving further in the playoffs. So I think it's LVE.
Yeah, I think it's LVE too, and that's just because of, you go back to the way the team looked going into training camp, and at that time you were like, man, it looks kind of thin at linebacker, and then Overshown kept improving, and you're like, okay, they got some depth here. They're going to be okay. Then you lose him, and you're just like, ooh, it looks pretty thin again. Now, I will say, Marquise Bell has definitely exceeded my expectations, but I just still think that there is better depth with, and it kind of factors in just the way Deron Bland's played. Like, he's just picked up right where he left off, and he continues to exceed my expectations as well. So because of that, I still think they can get the takeaways that they've been able to do so well the last couple of years, which I never thought I would say that if you told me that Diggs is gone and after a couple games into the season. But they do have enough of those playmakers on the back end, but I still have concerns about linebacker.
Yeah, I'm there too with Leighton being the more impactful injury. I love what Marquise Bell did against the Chargers. Like, do not get me wrong. I think he could make an argument he was the best player for the Cowboys on Monday night. He was filling running lanes. He was stepping back into coverage. He was reading things pre-snap. He was doing everything you wanted him to do, but it's hard to expect that from him every single game out, especially whenever the speed ramps up when you play teams like Buffalo, Miami, Philadelphia, and when the scheme kind of ramps up with teams like Miami and Detroit and things like that. So I kind of worry about Marquise Bell long term. Going into the season at that linebacker position, and again, he's undersized, and that's going to be tough whenever you're going up against those really physical runners that will probably plow through Bell a couple times, and he's going to get his bell rung. But I think that's got to be the more impactful injury, and also again factoring in what Deron Bland has done so far. He's been incredible. I think they got a young star there. It's crazy to think that easily the third best cornerback on this team is leading the NFL in interceptions since the start of last season. So no, I really like what Deron Bland's done.
I do hate to imagine Deron Bland at slot and Trayvon Diggs still outside.
I know,
just what you with Stephon, like the dreams that you have about like the turnover ability and ability to lock players down with having all three of those on the field. I'm sure they'll be dreaming about it going into next year, but like we're missing a lot with
I'll tell you this. This is something I've been kind of thinking about over the course of the last couple of weeks as DaRon Bland has just ramped up and looked really good. Does he play so well this season that you let Gilmore walk after a year and just put him on the boundary? Or would you rather have Bland in the slot and bring back Gilmore and have all three of them together?
Well, it brings up an interesting question because I know on our show we were talking yesterday about Gilmore, and Brian was making the point that he's starting to see some things that suggest to him that Gilmore may have some challenges as the season wears on. That being said, I think then your question becomes even more apparent if not only is Bland playing much better or showing you that he can play on the outside in a real great way for this team. In addition to that, maybe Gilmore isn't as great as maybe you wanted him to be or thought he should be. How does that affect him?
I got to see Gilmore because I see those same things, but it's Gilmore, right? Yeah. I have to see him then play for the rest of the season before I can say, all right, I'm not sure, because him losing a step is still probably going to be better than whoever you bring in here, especially if it's a young guy. If we can get Gilmore playing how he's playing now, right, where they're not attacking him, he still can go out there and turn the ball over, and you can get DaRon Bland inside. Because do you remember? So Orlando Scandrick was here. They fought tooth and nail to make sure that he stayed here because the importance of having somebody who can really play that nickel position is huge for your defense. It allows you to do so many things. So if you can get a guy like DaRon Bland and still have Gilmore, I think you try to do that. But that all is if Gilmore continues to play and he's serviceable, right? If you get out there and for the next 6 weeks of the season, you're like, oh man, we're in trouble, then DaRon Bland probably is going outside.
Yeah, when you play those teams that we were talking about earlier that have those real speed guys out at wide receiver, that's when it gets real challenging because I think even when you had Diggs, my concern was when you play faster receivers, is Gilmore going to be able to keep up? If you're taking fast receivers and sending them cross field, is he going to be able to carry that guy? And I don't know what the answer is to that. I'm seeing things that suggest that maybe that's going to be a challenge for him.
I think the one thing you can look at from Gilmore so far that will give you a little bit of positivity is the fact that he's not giving up anything downfield. Mm-hmm. Most of the stuff that he's giving up and the routes that he's being beat on are comebacks or it's like quick ends across the middle of the field. It's the action in front of him. So as long as he can stay there, I'm cool. But once he starts giving up things downfield, I think that's when you have that conversation.
I mean, I'm not saying it was his fault on it, but I'm pretty sure he was the one on Garrett Wilson when he busted that big one across, when he came across the field and busted that big touchdown. So I think that if he was on a different team, I'd probably have a little bit more concern, but just because for me, this thing starts with the pass rush, and if it's there, then he should be fine back there. But yeah, no, it's just funny thinking past this season because they're going to have some tough decisions to make at several places.
I'm going to give Gilmore just a little positive. Those deep over routes, which I wish that we would see Brandon Cooks running a little bit more. Yeah. It's not many guys, depending on who the receiver is, who's going to be able to run all the way to the opposite side of the field and then stay step to step with certain guys.
That route is built for the offense to win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They line up in tight end trips and then they run number 3 over. And if you got a guy like Tyreek Hilder, the Chiefs did that repeatedly, just over and over again because you can't cover it.
So this isn't the same thing, but so would it be somewhat similar though on the Cooks touchdown where he had to come all the way across, and Dak threw it up and he kind of had to loft it like it's same deal as what you're saying, like to have to carry it. Now you have to have a good protection from your offensive line to even hold that, but to have to go all the way across the field.
That one kind of, but they had in the red zone like that, and you have to get through all the traffic. So that is the bigger part. When they're running and then going vertical, that's a foot race. That's a real foot race. The traffic then helps those guys when they do those shallow crosses. Yeah. But like I said, when you see Tyreek Hill run that deep over, if you give it to CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Cooks, guys like that, then I think you'll see if somebody's in man, that deep safety, he either has to jump that number 3 going across or it's open every time.
Yep. There's nothing you can do about it. All right, one more question I wanted to get to before we end the show today. Right now, Dallas is ranked 21st in rush yards per carry at 3.9 yards. What do you think is the biggest factor that needs to improve the rushing attack? The offensive line, the running backs, or the play calling?
Go ahead.
I just think if the offensive line, if by some miraculous chance, since it doesn't happen, I'm saying it's miraculous, if you could keep that starting 5 together that's finally been together now for these last 2 games, I think it will gradually get better. The issue is that seems like it's hoping for a lot with the way they've had so many injuries over the last couple of years there. And so if that happens and it just, every week you don't know who's starting at right tackle or whatever, I think it's going to be tough to really get it going because it really hasn't been there. But I do think that those guys, those 5, are talented enough that if they can keep working together, eventually something will click. It's not going to be, like it was with DeMarco Murray or Zeke at the beginning of Zeke's career where they were leading the league, but good enough that it helps the rest of the offense if you can keep that 5 healthy.
For me, it's the play calling because whenever you look at when Kellen Moore and Zeke were here, Zeke was going to be that downhill physical guy here in the last couple of years. And then once Tony Pollard started to ascend, you were like, okay, we can be creative in the run game. We can throw in some hitches into this offense that we haven't been able to do before. And that creativity has just been completely evaporated in this offense. And they're treating Pollard almost like Zeke. Like, he's not a downhill guy. And he can get you yards if you need him to get you yards. But I want to see him on the outside. I want to see counters. I feel like we haven't run counter one time this year. I think 2 draws by my count. So get him open in space and let him see some things work. And I think it also factors in with the receiving game as well. I know this is talking about the running game specifically, but there's so many things that they could do in the receiving game with Pollard that they haven't been able to do. I think I mentioned it on Talking Cowboys yesterday. After that 60-yard reception on Monday night, I was kind of sad because I was like, we're not going to see that because that was improvisation and it was just Dak finding a guy that was open across the middle of the field. There's opportunities to do that with Pollard. I just feel like they're not being explored.
Yeah, real quick before you go, Danny, just to that point, I think it was back after week 3 or week 4, I found this stat that at that point in the season, the Cowboys had run Pollard between the tackles double the number of times they'd run him to the outside. Yeah. Speaking of how they're using him, I think that's really kind of the key is that they're using him as though he's Zeke. And it does make me wonder, like we saw in that last game, he was in the open field. There was rarely a time I can remember in his career when he was even with the defensive guy and the guy caught him. And that guy went and got him on that play. And he even talked about it after the game. He's like, I got to get back in the lab. I got to figure out how to turn that into a touchdown. But I do wonder if the way that they're playing him now has affected that to some degree. And he's not as explosive maybe or not having to show that explosiveness as much. And maybe that's affecting his level of explosiveness.
Yeah, I mean, in an effort not to repeat what y'all said, mine is those, but then also then your lack of ability to stretch the field on offense. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I want to call it play calling or inability to be able to connect on those deeper routes, because we all know if you go into a game and the defense knows that you can't stretch the field, they're just going to sit there and tempt you to do it, right? Hey, they'll be able to run cover 2, right? If they can stop you while they're running cover 2, then they're going to run that all day, right? So you have to be able to then say, okay, they're in cover 2, we're going to stretch these guys out, make them get creative on defense, and then hopefully that opens up more lanes on the offensive line. But if not, if you're not able to then say, all right, that can beat us, then they're just going to figure out a way to stop you with the whatever they have in the box. I think hopefully these Gallup plays, Brandon Cooks deep overs, maybe some longer shots. I think hopefully that'll open it up a little bit. But I'm with y'all on creativity in the run game, especially with a guy like Pollard. Don't run him in there like Zeke. He's not that guy. He's a like you can run counters, some traps, some tosses outside to get him in the open field and then put fear in those defenders.
Yeah, they by and large are not throwing to the deep middle of the field at all this year. There's only been a few times this year that they've done it, they even tried it. And last year, if you remember in the offense, they were doing that a ton. So when you're not challenging that part of the field, to your point, then defenses at some point just start to say they're not going to throw there. We don't have to worry about it. And you just cover the other parts of the field, which makes it even harder to do what you want to do in those parts of the field.
San Fran ran cover 2. They ran cover 2, and we did not take advantage of them running cover 2. And they were stopping the run with cover 2. Yeah. So until you're able to figure that out, then you got an issue. But you should be able to complete some passes in cover 2.
All right. Appreciate you joining us. We'll be back on Monday. Got lots more questions I'm going to throw at these guys. Till then, for Nick Harris, John Machota, Danny McCray, I'm Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break, live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!